The sheriff clicked the cuffs around Alicia Monroe's wrists while the boy inside the overturned SUV struggled for his next breath. Rain hammered Route 46, flashing red and blue across the wet pavement, across the broken glass, across Alicia's hands still marked from trying to keep 17-year-old Caleb Price alive. His mother stood 10 feet away, shaking so hard she could barely speak. "Please," Rachel Price begged. She was helping him. Sheriff Travis Calder did not look at the boy. He looked at Alicia, a black woman in a dark rain jacket, kneeling beside his crash scene like she had the right to give orders. "She's not a nurse," he said loudly, making sure the deputies, the drivers, and the cell phones heard him. "She's contaminating my scene." Alicia did not scream. She did not fight. She turned her head just enough to see the paramedics stepping out of the ambulance. Her voice stayed calm, low, exact. "Check his left lung. It's collapsing." Calder laughed once, short and cold. "Now she's diagnosing people from handcuffs." Nobody laughed with him. The rain kept falling. Caleb made a thin, frightening sound from inside the vehicle, and even Deputy Evan Miles looked toward the SUV like something had gone terribly wrong. Alicia swallowed, then spoke again. "My trauma badge is in my left pocket. Scan it before you move him." Calder stepped closer, blocking her from the crowd. "You don't give commands here." What he did not know was that the badge in her pocket had already been verified by County Dispatch 11 minutes before his cruiser arrived. What he did not know was that 2 cameras had recorded every word. And what he did not know was that the woman he had just cuffed was the only reason Caleb Price was still alive. 6 hours earlier, Alicia Monroe stepped out of the staff entrance of St. Mercy Regional Hospital with her shoulders heavy from a 14-hour shift and the smell of antiseptic still clinging to her jacket. It was early evening in Bryan County, Georgia, the kind of late November evening when the sky turned charcoal before supper and the cold rain made every streetlight look blurred around the edges. St. Mercy sat on the east side of the county, a red brick hospital between a dollar store, a Baptist church, and a strip of fast food signs glowing through the mist. Ambulances came and went under the emergency bay canopy, tires hissing on wet concrete, radios murmuring, automatic doors breathing open and closed like tired lungs. Alicia had started before sunrise. By noon, she had handled more alarms than some people here in a month. A construction worker with chest pain, a little girl with a broken wrist, an elderly man who kept apologizing for needing help. Alicia moved through all of it the same way she always did, calm hands, steady eyes, voice low enough to settle a room. People at St. Mercy knew her as the nurse who noticed what others missed. A change in breathing, a pale lip, a pulse that did not match the monitor. When younger nurses panicked, they looked for Alicia. When new doctors got too confident, they learned to listen when she said, "Check again." That evening, she should have gone straight home. Her apartment was 20 minutes away in a quiet complex near Pine Hollow Road, and she had a frozen dinner waiting in the freezer, the kind she bought in packs because life was easier when meals did not require decisions. But before she left town, she drove to Willow Creek Assisted Living to see her father, Earl Monroe, a retired firefighter whose knees had given out long before his instincts did. Earl had slipped that morning, nothing serious, but Alicia needed to see his face for herself. His room smelled faintly of peppermint, old coffee, and the lavender lotion the nurses used on his hands. He smiled when she walked in, but his eyes still studied her like she was 8 years old and riding her bicycle too fast. "You look worn down, baby," he said. Alicia kissed his forehead and told him she was fine. He did not believe her, but he let it pass. Before she left, he caught her wrist gently and said the same thing he had said since she was a child listening to scanner calls at the kitchen table. "When everybody freezes, you move." Alicia smiled, promised she would call in the morning, and headed west toward home. Route 46 was slick, narrow, and darker than it should have been. The rain tapped against her windshield. Then, somewhere ahead, tires shrieked, metal folded, and Alicia Monroe stopped being tired. Alicia Monroe was 39 years old, though most people guessed younger until they noticed her eyes. Her face still had a quiet softness to it, but her eyes carried the kind of alertness that came from years of walking into rooms where seconds mattered and nobody had time to explain the whole story. She was 5 feet 7 inches tall, strong in the practical way hospital work made a person strong, with shoulders used to 12-hour shifts, hands used to pressure and precision, and a voice that could cut through panic without ever sounding loud. Outside St. Mercy, she looked ordinary. A dark rain jacket, faded blue scrubs under it, running shoes with worn soles, hair pulled back tight because loose hair had no place around gloves, tape, monitors, and rushing stretchers. No diamond necklace, no designer purse, no car that announced money. She drove a 9-year-old Honda Accord with a cracked cup holder, a blanket in the back seat, and a trauma kit in the trunk because Alicia Monroe had learned a long time ago that emergencies did not wait for clean rooms and bright lights. To strangers, she was just another tired black woman coming off work in a county that noticed women like her only when it wanted something from them or wanted them out of the way. But at St. Mercy, everyone knew Alicia. Nurses on the night shift knew the sound of her footsteps before they saw her. Paramedics trusted her before they trusted the chart. Residents learned that if Alicia quietly moved closer to a patient, something was wrong even if the machines had not admitted it yet. She was not a doctor, and she never pretended to be one. That mattered to her. She respected roles, respected training, respected the chain of care. But she also knew what her hands had done. She had caught medication errors before they reached a vein. She had noticed a patient slipping while the room still looked calm. She had talked frightened families through the worst minutes of their lives without making herself the center of the story. Her badge at the hospital said lead trauma nurse, but Alicia never wore that title like jewelry. Titles were for doors and computer systems. People were saved by attention. She had learned attention from her father, Earl Monroe, long before she ever learned it from nursing school. Earl had spent 28 years with the Broward County Fire Department, back when the department was smaller, poorer, and slower to serve neighborhoods that looked like theirs. Alicia grew up in a narrow yellow house on the south side of town, where the porch boards creaked in summer heat and the kitchen radio stayed tuned to weather alerts. Her mother, Denise, worked as a certified nursing assistant at a rehabilitation center, washing strangers, feeding strangers, turning strangers carefully so their skin would not break down. Her father came home smelling like smoke, rain, metal, and coffee. Some nights, Earl would sit at the kitchen table with his hands wrapped around a mug he never drank from, staring at nothing. Alicia was little then, but she understood silence before she understood tragedy. When other children played house, Alicia lined up stuffed animals and checked their breathing. When sirens passed, she did not cover her ears. She listened until the sound faded. Her mother used to say, "That girl was born looking for who needs help." But need had a way of finding their family too. When Alicia was 16, her mother got sick after months of ignoring symptoms because rent, groceries, and medical bills were all louder than pain. Denise kept working until she could not stand through a shift. By the time the hospital took her seriously, everything was harder than it should have been. Alicia never blamed one person. Life was rarely that simple. But she remembered the delay. She remembered the waiting room. She remembered watching adults speak over her mother instead of to her. She remembered how invisible a black woman in pain could become when the room had already decided she was exaggerating. Denise passed away before Alicia graduated high school. At the funeral, Earl wore his dress uniform, and Alicia stood beside him without crying because people kept telling her she was strong, and she did not yet know. Strength was not the same as numbness. After that, she moved through life with a quiet promise inside her. Nobody in front of her would be ignored if she could help it. Nobody would be dismissed because they were poor, tired, scared, black, old, young, or unable to speak the language doctors preferred. She went to community college first because that was what money allowed. She worked nights at a pharmacy, weekends at a diner, and studied anatomy on buses under fluorescent lights. Later, she earned her nursing degree. Then she joined the Army Reserve as a medic, not because she wanted glory, but because tuition needed paying and discipline felt familiar. The Army taught her to stay calm when the ground under everybody else seemed to tilt. It taught her that fear was not an excuse to stop thinking. It taught her that the person who sounded the most confident was not always the person who knew what to do. Alicia carried those lessons back to Georgia and into St. Mercy, where she built a reputation one shift at a time. Still, reputation did not pay all bills or solve all grief. Earl's health had declined after his second knee surgery. Then came blood pressure problems, memory lapses, and the fall that finally made independent living unsafe. Willow Creek assisted living cost more than Alicia wanted to think about. Insurance helped, but not enough. Every month, she balanced hospital overtime against guilt. Too many extra shifts meant fewer visits with her father. Fewer shifts meant more unpaid balances folded into envelopes on her kitchen counter. Her apartment was clean but sparse. A sofa she bought secondhand. A dining table with one chair, because she usually ate standing up. A framed photograph of her parents on the bookshelf. In it, Denise was laughing, Earl was pretending not to smile, and Alicia was 12 years old with her arms crossed like she was already supervising the world. There were no awards on Alicia's walls. No certificates displayed. No army photos. No newspaper clipping from the year St. Mercy honored her trauma team after a major highway pileup. She kept all of that in a storage bin under her bed. When a younger nurse once asked why, Alicia said, "Because the wall does not need to know who I am." The truth was more complicated. Alicia had seen how quickly credentials changed the way people treated her. The same person who ignored her in scrubs would soften when they saw the official badge. The same man who called her sweetheart would say ma'am after learning her title. She hated that. She hated needing proof before basic respect arrived. So she did not lead with power. She led with work. She believed authority should be quiet until needed, like a steady hand at someone's back. That was why, on the night everything changed, Alicia did not think about how she looked when she pulled onto the shoulder of Route 46. She did not think about the rain flattening her hairline, or the mud splashing her shoes, or how a black woman in dark scrubs might appear to someone looking for a reason to doubt her. She heard the crash, saw hazard lights flickering through the storm, and felt her father's words rise inside her as naturally as breath. When everybody freezes, you move. So Alicia moved. Alicia did not carry the trauma kit because she expected praise. She carried it because she had once watched 12 minutes become a lifetime. Inside the trunk of her Honda, beneath a folded blanket and a reusable grocery bag, was a hard black case with orange reflective tape on the handle. Most people would have mistaken it for a roadside emergency box, maybe jumper cables, or a tire pump. Alicia knew every inch of it by touch. Gloves in the top pocket, gauze rolled tight in plastic sleeves, trauma shears clipped along the side, a small flashlight, pressure bandages, medical tape, a compact airway tool sealed in a sterile wrapper, a tourniquet she hoped she would never need but refused to drive without. None of it made her a hero. It made her prepared. That was the difference Alicia believed in. Heroes waited for applause. Prepared people moved before anyone thought to clap. In the left inside pocket of her rain jacket was the other thing she carried, flat against her ribs where she could feel the hard edge when she turned. Her St. Mercy Trauma Response Badge. It was not the same badge she wore inside the hospital. Clipped to her scrubs. This one was heavier, sealed in clear plastic, with her photograph, her full name, her certification number, the St. Mercy Regional Hospital seal, and a quick response code tied directly to the Broward County Emergency Medical Authorization System. Under her name, in small black print, were the words Lead Trauma Nurse and Emergency Field Response Authorized. It looked simple, almost unimpressive. A card, a strip, a barcode. But if a dispatcher scanned or entered that number, the system would show Alicia's active credentials, her hospital status, her trauma training, her emergency response clearance, and the direct contact for the trauma director who could confirm her identity at any hour of the day. That director was Dr. Marcus Ellison, a 61-year-old trauma surgeon with silver at his temples and a voice so calm that even angry families lowered their volume when he entered a room. Dr. Ellison had trained Alicia for years. He had seen her read a patient's breathing from across a trauma bay. He had seen her stop a resident from making a rushed decision with one quiet sentence. He once told a room full of new staff, "If Nurse Monroe says something feels wrong, you stop and find out why." Alicia had looked down at the floor when he said it. She did not like being turned into a lesson, but she remembered the words because Dr. Ellison did not hand out compliments. He handed out standards. 3 years earlier, St. Mercy had joined a county program that allowed certain qualified medical personnel to assist at emergency scenes when they arrived before ambulances. The program existed because Broward County was wide, rural in places, and full of roads where a siren could take too long to reach a person who did not have too long to wait. Alicia had completed every requirement. Advanced trauma life support for nurses, emergency scene safety, incident command basics, radio protocol, documentation. She had sat through long county meetings where sheriff deputies, firefighters, paramedics, and hospital staff argued over who had authority where. Alicia never argued for power. She argued for clarity. A person bleeding on the roadside did not care which department owned the scene. They cared who knew what to do. Her badge was supposed to solve that problem. It was supposed to tell law enforcement, fire rescue, and emergency medical services that she was not a random bystander giving opinions. She was trained, registered, and authorized to stabilize a patient until transport arrived. But a badge only worked if someone was willing to look at it. That detail would matter later. Not because the card proved Alicia had value. She had value before plastic said so. It mattered because the card carried a timeline, and timelines have a way of turning lies into evidence. When Alicia pulled onto the shoulder that evening, she called 911 before she ever opened her trunk. Her voice was steady despite the rain and the flashing hazard lights ahead. She gave the dispatcher her name, her location on Route 46, the approximate mile marker, and the condition of the vehicle as she could see it through the windshield. Then she gave the number from her trauma response badge from memory because she had repeated it in drills so often it lived behind her teeth. The dispatcher paused, typed, and confirmed her authorization. Nurse Monroe, emergency medical services are en route. If the scene is safe, provide support until responders arrive. Alicia answered, understood, and ended the call only after making sure the line had captured her name, her credential, and the time. Then she stepped into the rain. A woman named Nora Whitfield was already standing near the road with one hand over her mouth and the other wrapped around her phone. Her sedan was parked crooked behind the wreck, hazard lights blinking weakly in the storm. I do not know what to do, Nora kept saying. Alicia looked at her, not sharply, but with enough focus to anchor her. You called 911. Nora nodded. Good. I need your light. Keep it steady. If I ask you to move, move slow. If anyone asks, I am a trauma nurse from St. Mercy. Nora nodded again, calmer now because Alicia sounded like a person who had brought order with her. Alicia reached into her trunk, opened the black kit, and pulled on gloves. She did not remove the badge from her pocket. There was no time to hold up credentials for strangers in the rain. The proof was there. The dispatcher had it. Dr. Ellison could confirm it. Her hands knew what to do. And inside the overturned sport utility vehicle, Kayla Price was running out of minutes. Route 46 was not the kind of road people remembered until something went wrong on it. During the day, it looked harmless. 2 narrow lanes cutting through pine woods, soybean fields, and long stretches of county land where mailboxes sat a quarter-mile from the houses they belonged to. At night, especially in rain, it became something else. The shoulders were soft red clay. The painted lines faded in places. The nearest streetlight stood almost half a mile back near an old feed store that had closed before Alicia was in high school. Cell service dropped in pockets along the curve near mile marker 12, and everybody in Bryan County knew to slow down there, except the people passing through who trusted their headlights more than the road deserved. The crash had happened just beyond that curve. Caleb Price's dark blue sport utility vehicle lay tilted against the guardrail, its rear wheels still angled toward the road, one headlight throwing a broken beam into the trees. A white pickup truck had clipped the edge of the lane and kept going, leaving behind a side mirror, a streak of pale paint on the guardrail, and a trail of disturbed gravel that would matter later if anyone cared enough to look. Rain washed over everything, making the blacktop shine like oil. Steam rose softly from the damaged hood. Hazard lights blinked in a tired rhythm, orange, dark, like the road itself was trying to signal for help. The rules of a place like this were supposed to be simple. First person there called 911. Nobody smoked near leaking fuel. Nobody moved an injured person unless the vehicle was burning or sinking or falling. Whoever had medical training helped until emergency medical services arrived. Law enforcement secured the road. Fire rescue stabilized the scene. Paramedics took over care. That was how the system worked on paper. But paper rules had a weakness. They depended on the people holding power to respect the people holding knowledge. Alicia saw the scene in layers. The angle of the vehicle, the shallow ditch filling with muddy water. The mother's car stopped 20 yards back with its driver door open. Nora Whitfield's sedan crooked behind it, hazard lights blinking. A trucker named Samuel Keene had parked his 18-wheeler across part of the lane to slow traffic, orange triangles placed carefully on the road behind him. He had done that much right. Rachel Price stood near the overturned vehicle in a gray cardigan soaked through at the sleeves, repeating her son's name as if the sound could keep him present. Caleb was 17, a senior at Briar Central High, still wearing a Letterman jacket under his seat belt. His backpack had spilled across the ceiling, because the ceiling had become the floor. A calculus book, a baseball cap, and a plastic bag from a pharmacy lay scattered among safety glass. Alicia clocked each detail without letting any one of them swallow her attention. She asked Nora for the phone light. She asked Samuel to keep people away from the lane. She told Rachel, gently but firmly, to stand where Caleb could hear her voice, but not where she would block access. Then Alicia leaned into the broken window space and spoke to Caleb like they had known each other for years. "My name is Alicia. I am going to stay with you until the ambulance gets here." Her trauma kit sat open on the wet pavement beside her left knee. The orange tape on the handle glowed whenever hazard lights passed over it. Inside, every item had a place. Every place had a purpose. Her trauma response badge stayed in her left pocket, pressed against her ribs, carrying the quiet proof that dispatch had already cleared her. Nora's phone recorded from the roadside, its lens catching Alicia's voice, the open kit, the rain, the time on the screen, and the moment Alicia said clearly, "Tell the dispatcher Nurse Monroe is on scene and the patient is still responsive." Farther away, sirens began to rise through the trees. Alicia did not know yet which siren belonged to the ambulance and which belonged to Sheriff Travis Calder. She only knew the road had become a clock, the rain was stealing visibility, and every minute that passed would leave evidence behind. Sheriff Travis Calder heard the call while sitting in his cruiser outside Miller's Grocery, watching rain slide down the windshield and turn the world into gray streaks. He had been sheriff of Briar County for almost 14 years, long enough for people to lower their voices when his boots crossed a diner floor, long enough for courthouse clerks to smile before they knew what mood he was in, long enough for his name to feel less like a public office and more like a warning. Before that, he had been a deputy, then chief deputy, then the man who shook every hand at church barbecues and promised nervous homeowners he would keep the county the way it used to be. People liked that phrase when Calder said it. The way it used to be. It sounded harmless if you did not listen too closely. He was 52 now, broad through the chest, silver at the sideburns, with a campaign sticker fading on the back window of his patrol unit even though election season had not officially started. Calder liked reminders. He liked his badge polished, his belt heavy, his name painted in gold letters on the office door. He liked deputies who said yes before he finished speaking. What he did not like was being questioned, corrected, recorded, or ignored. In his mind, Briar County worked because he decided how it worked. Dispatchers could send calls. Paramedics could patch people up. Firefighters could bring their equipment. But the scene belonged to law enforcement, and law enforcement, in Briar County, meant Travis Calder. That belief had carried him through complaints that never seemed to stick. A traffic stop where a college student said Calder searched his car for no reason. A domestic call where a neighbor said Calder dismissed a black woman's fear as drama. A county fair incident where 3 teenagers claimed he lined them up against a fence because they looked like trouble. Each time, Calder had the same answer. People were too sensitive. Criminals knew how to play victim. Outsiders did not understand small-town policing. The county commission accepted those answers because Calder delivered what they wanted. Most, quiet headlines, and the appearance of control. He knew which local reporter liked access. He knew which judge owed him a favor from an old campaign fundraiser. He knew which deputies would forget details if forgetting protected the office. That was why he believed punishment was something that happened to other men, weaker men, men without roots. Calder had roots. His father had worn the same badge before him. His grandfather had run a feed store 2 blocks from the courthouse. His family name was stitched into Briar County history, and Calder mistook history for permission. Lately, though, the ground under him had started to feel less solid. The county was changing. New families moving in from Atlanta and Savannah. Younger voters asking about body cameras and civil rights training. St. Mercy pushing for stronger emergency medical authority at roadside scenes. State officials talking about oversight. Calder hated that word. Oversight. It sounded to him like strangers peering over his shoulder, looking for a mistake. He had fought the medical response program from the beginning, not openly enough to lose, but loudly enough that everyone knew where he stood. He called it messy. He called it dangerous. Around deputies he trusted, he called it civilians playing hero. What bothered him most was not safety. It was hierarchy. A nurse with a badge from a hospital could arrive before him, make decisions before him, and be right before he had a chance to take command. Calder could not stand the idea of authority that did not come from a gun belt, a cruiser, or an election sign. That evening had already left him irritated. His youngest deputy, Evan Miles, had corrected a report typo in front of the shift. A local pastor had asked during a town hall whether the sheriff's office planned to release more stop data by race. Then dispatch sent him to Route 46 for a vehicle crash with possible injuries, and Calder saw an opportunity to become useful in public again. Crashes gave him a stage. Flashing lights, wet pavement, frightened people, deputies looking for orders. He could step out, square his shoulders, and make everybody remember who controlled the county when trouble came. He turned on his lights and pulled away from Miller's grocery, tires hissing through puddles. Deputy Evan Miles followed from 2 streets back. Calder's body camera activated automatically when he started the response, a feature he disliked because it captured too much before a man had time to shape the story. He touched it once with 2 fingers, checking the red light, then looked back through the windshield. The rain thickened as he reached Route 46. Through the trees, he saw hazard lights, a truck angled across the lane, people gathered near an overturned vehicle, and in the middle of it all, a black woman kneeling beside the wreck with an open medical kit, speaking calmly while others listened. Calder's jaw tightened before he knew why. She was not in uniform. She was not one of his deputies. She was not waiting for permission. Worst of all, people were obeying her. By the time his cruiser rolled to a stop, Travis Calder had already decided what he was looking at. Not help. Not training. Not a woman trying to save a boy. A challenge. Calder stepped out of the cruiser before the tires had fully settled in the rainwater, one hand resting on his belt, the other lifted like he was already pushing the entire scene down with his palm. "Everybody step back," he called. His voice carried across the road, over the ticking hazard lights and the steady rush of rain through pine branches. Samuel Keene moved closer to his truck. Nora Whitfield lowered her phone a few inches, but did not stop recording. Rachel Price turned toward the sheriff with desperate relief, because in that first second, she still believed another adult had arrived to help. Alicia did not turn around. She was leaning through the broken window space, one gloved hand steady near Caleb's shoulder, the other keeping pressure where pressure needed to stay. Her face was close enough for Caleb to hear her over the rain. "Stay with me, Caleb. Slow breaths if you can. Your mom is right here." Calder saw the open kit first, then the scrubs under Alicia's rain jacket, then her skin, then the way everyone seemed to be waiting for her next instruction. His expression hardened. "Ma'am," he said, stretching the word until it sounded less like respect and more like a warning. "Move away from that vehicle." Alicia kept her voice even. "Sheriff, I am Alicia Monroe, lead trauma nurse from St. Mercy Regional. I am authorized through County Dispatch. This patient is stable only if he is not moved carelessly." Calder glanced at Deputy Evan Miles, who had just arrived behind him, young face pale under the cruiser lights. "Did dispatch say we had St. Mercy on scene?" Evan hesitated, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. "I heard there was a nurse, sir." Calder looked back at Alicia. "A nurse? That what we are calling it now?" Rachel stepped forward. She helped him breathe. "Please, let her keep helping." Calder lifted a finger without looking at her. "Ma'am, stand back." Alicia finally turned her head just enough for him to see her profile. Calm eyes. Wet lashes. No fear. "My trauma response badge is in my left inside pocket. You can verify it with dispatch. I already gave my credential number before you arrived." That was his first chance to stop. All he had to do was ask dispatch. All he had to do was let Deputy Miles check the badge without moving Alicia. Instead, Calder looked her up and down, from the worn running shoes to the rain jacket to the dark scrubs that had already seen a full shift before the storm. "You got identification, or you just keep a box of supplies in your car and hope people clap?" Nobody answered. The words hung there, small and ugly, dressed up like procedure. Alicia did not bite. "The badge is in my pocket because both my hands are occupied. If I release pressure or let his head drop, his condition may worsen before emergency medical services arrive." Calder gave a short breath through his nose. "You talk like you swallowed a textbook." Alicia looked back at Caleb, watching his chest rise unevenly. I talk like someone who knows what is happening. Deputy Miles shifted. Sheriff, maybe I can just check her pocket and call it in. Calder snapped his eyes toward him. Did I ask you to run my scene, Deputy? Evan's mouth closed. That was Calder's second chance to stop, and he stepped over it like it was a puddle. The ambulance. Siren was still distant, not yet close enough to save anyone from pride. Calder moved nearer to Alicia, boots crunching lightly on safety glass. Listen carefully. I do not know you. I do not know what you think you are. But when I arrive, you follow my orders. Alicia nodded once, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement that he had spoken. Understood. Then give an order that keeps him alive. Have someone hold cervical stabilization while I talk you through what has been done. Have Deputy Miles verify my badge. Have dispatch confirm the time I called in. Any of those choices works. Nora's phone captured that sentence clearly. Calder saw the lens pointed his way, and his face changed. Not much. Just enough. A man adjusting himself for an audience. Ma'am, are you refusing a lawful command? Alicia answered immediately. No. I am asking you not to interrupt emergency care without a replacement provider ready. That is a lot of words for no. It is a lot of words because the situation is serious. Samuel Keene, standing near his 18-wheeler, cleared his throat. Sheriff, she sounded like she knew what she was doing. Calder turned on him. Did I ask for a roadside committee? Samuel looked away, jaw tight. Rachel began crying again, softly now, one hand pressed to her mouth. Caleb made a weak sound from inside the vehicle, and Alicia leaned closer. Caleb, listen to your mother's voice. Do not try to move. Calder's pride heard only one thing. She had ignored him in front of witnesses. She had corrected him in front of his deputy. She had given calm instructions while his lights flashed behind her. So he chose the story that protected his ego. For all I know, he said, louder now, you are interfering with an active crash investigation. Alicia's eyes lifted to his body camera. Then let the record show I have identified myself, stated where my badge is, and asked you to verify it. For 1 second, even the rain seemed quieter. Calder could still have stopped. He could have laughed it off, checked the badge, blamed confusion, and let the night move on. Instead, he stepped closer and said, Step away from the vehicle, Alicia Monroe. Last warning. Calder's last warning landed in the rain, and for a moment nobody moved. Alicia kept her hands where they were, not because she wanted to challenge him, but because Caleb's breathing had changed again. It was smaller now, thinner, the kind of breath that made Alicia's entire body sharpen with attention. Sheriff, she said, still looking at the boy and not at him. I will comply as soon as another trained provider takes over. Until then, moving me away is medically unsafe. Calder let out a dry laugh. Medically unsafe, he repeated, turning slightly so the people behind him could hear. You hear that? She has decided my crash scene belongs to her because she knows a few hospital words. Rachel Price shook her head, tears mixing with rain on her face. Please, she told you who she is. Just check. Ma'am, I told you to stand back. His tone sharpened. Rachel stepped back as if the words had pushed her. Alicia spoke again, lower this time. Deputy Miles can verify my badge without disturbing patient care. Calder did not even glance at Evan. Deputy Miles will do what I tell him to do. Evan stood near the cruiser, one hand hovering uselessly near his radio, caught between the uniform he wore and the truth forming in front of him. Nora Whitfield's phone stayed raised. The red recording light reflected faintly in the rain on her screen. Calder saw it again and straightened, becoming louder, more official, more dangerous because now he was performing. For the record, he said, facing Alicia but speaking to everyone. This unidentified woman is refusing to leave a restricted emergency scene after multiple lawful commands. Alicia's eyes lifted toward his body camera. For the record, I identified myself as Alicia Monroe, lead trauma nurse from St. Mercy Regional. My badge is in my left inside pocket. I requested verification through dispatch. I requested a trained handoff before stepping away. Calder's jaw tightened. She was not yelling, and somehow that made it worse for him. If she had yelled, he could have called her hysterical. If she had cursed, he could have called her hostile. But she was calm, precise, and every sentence she spoke made his version of events harder to sell. So he changed tactics. He He walked to the open trauma kit and looked down at it like it was something suspicious instead of something organized. "What is all this?" he asked. Alicia kept watching Caleb. "Medical supplies." "From where?" "My emergency kit." "Convenient." He bent slightly, picked up the flashlight, turned it in his hand, then dropped it back into the case without care. Several people flinched at the small clatter. Alicia did not. Her voice remained controlled. "Please do not contaminate my kit. Everything is arranged for quick access." Calder smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Your kit? Lady, you are on a public highway inside an active investigation. Nothing here is yours right now." He nudged the edge of the kit with his boot, not hard enough to scatter it, but enough to make the message clear. He could touch what she needed. He could interrupt what she had built. He could prove he had the power to make things worse. Samuel Keene took one step forward. "Sheriff, with respect, that does not seem helpful." Calder swung around. "Get back by your truck before I decide you are obstructing too." Samuel froze, then slowly backed away, anger written across his face, but fear holding his feet. Alicia breathed in through her nose, counting the way she counted inside trauma rooms. One task at a time, one danger at a time. Pride was dangerous, but Caleb was first. "Caleb," she said gently, "I need you to keep listening. Your mother is right here." Rachel leaned forward, voice shaking. "I am here, baby. I am right here." Calder turned toward Rachel again. "Do not crowd the scene. He is my son, and I am the sheriff." Those 5 words told everyone exactly who Travis Calder believed mattered most on that road. Not the boy in the vehicle, not the mother begging in the rain, not the nurse holding the line between panic and procedure. Him. Alicia saw Caleb's chest rise unevenly, then pause too long. Her focus narrowed. "Sheriff, listen carefully. He may have air building pressure in his chest. Emergency medical services need to know that immediately. If he is moved wrong or delayed, his condition can deteriorate fast." Calder scoffed. There it is again. Big medical speech. You people always think confidence is the same as credentials. The road went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with the rain. Nora's mouth opened slightly. Evan looked at the ground. Rachel stared at Calder like she had just understood something bigger and colder than incompetence. Alicia did not react the way he expected. No raised voice. No visible wound. She only said, "My credentials are in my pocket. You are choosing not to check them." That sentence hit him harder than anger would have. He stepped closer until his shadow fell over her shoulder. "You do not tell me what I am choosing." Alicia continued, "Then choose to verify." It was the cleanest exit he would ever get. One call to dispatch. One check of the badge. One moment of humility that could have saved his career and protected the boy at the same time. Calder refused it. He reached toward Alicia's upper arm, not roughly, but with enough force to claim control. Rachel gasped. Nora's phone followed the movement. Alicia did not pull away. "If you move me," she said, "someone must take over pressure and keep his neck aligned." Calder talked over her. "Stand up. Deputy Miles can take my right-hand position. Stand up. Sheriff, you are interrupting care. I am ending a problem." He pulled her back just enough that her right hand shifted. Alicia instantly spoke to Evan, her voice sharper now, but still measured. "Deputy, place your hand exactly where mine was. Firm pressure. Do not press on the glass. Keep his head centered." Evan looked to Calder first. That half-second told Alicia everything about how this county worked. Calder barked, "Do not take orders from her." "Then take responsibility," Alicia said. "Because from this second forward, every delay is yours." Calder's face changed. The calm words had done what screaming could not. They had placed his name beside the consequence. He looked at the watching phones, the mother, the trucker, the deputy, and the black nurse who still refused to shrink. Then he made the choice that would follow him into every hearing, every headline, and every sworn statement after that night. "Hands behind your back," he said. Rachel cried out, "No, please, please do not do this." Alicia's eyes stayed on Caleb as long as they could. "Caleb, keep listening to your mom." Calder took her wrist. Evan whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Sheriff." Calder ignored him. Alicia spoke one more time, clear enough for Nora's phone and Calder's body camera to catch every word. "My trauma badge is in my left pocket. County Dispatch verified me before you arrived. Check the log." Calder leaned close and said, "I am done listening. Then he turned her away from the vehicle while the siren of the ambulance finally broke through the trees. The ambulance rounded the curve with its lights cutting through the rain, and for one brief second Rachel Price looked relieved. Then she saw Alicia Monroe being turned away from her son, and relief disappeared from her face. Calder locked the cuffs around Alicia's wrists and guided her toward the front of his cruiser, as if the entire road needed to see who was in charge. Alicia walked without resisting, but her eyes never left the overturned sport utility vehicle. "Deputy Miles," she said, clear and urgent, "listen to me. Keep pressure where my right hand was. Do not let his head turn. Tell the paramedic possible left side chest pressure and delayed breathing pattern." Evan looked frozen. Calder snapped, "If you repeat one more order from my prisoner, you can explain it to internal review." The word prisoner changed the air. Until then, some people had still believed this was confusion, a tense misunderstanding in the rain. But now Calder had made it official. He had taken a verified medical responder away from a living patient and called her a criminal before anyone had checked her badge. Paramedic Jonah Reed jumped out of the ambulance, rain bouncing off his jacket, medical bag in hand. He saw Alicia by the cruiser and stopped so suddenly his partner nearly bumped into him. "Why is Nurse Monroe in cuffs?" he asked. It was not a guess. It was recognition. Rachel spun toward Calder. "You hear that? He knows her." Calder did not blink. "She interfered with my scene and refused to identify herself." Alicia turned her head toward the body camera on Calder's chest. "That is false. I identified myself multiple times. My trauma response badge is in my left inside pocket. County Dispatch verified my credential before you arrived." Jonah looked at Calder, then at Evan, then at the vehicle. "Sheriff, she is St. Mercy trauma. If she was with the patient, I need her report now." "You will get your report from me," Calder said. Jonah's expression tightened. "With respect, you are not the treating provider." Calder stepped closer to him. "And with respect, this is still my road." Behind them, Caleb made a weak, strained sound from inside the vehicle. Alicia's shoulders stiffened, not from fear, but from the knowledge of what that sound meant. "Jonah," she said, "left side. Watch the breathing." He was compensating before I was pulled away. Calder pointed at her. "One more word, and I add obstruction." That was the line he could never uncross. Not the cuffs alone. Not the public humiliation. The lie. He had been given her name, her hospital, the location of her badge, a deputy willing to check, a paramedic who recognized her, and a mother begging him to listen. He chose the lie anyway. Nora Whitfield stood near the shoulder, phone still recording, hands trembling so badly the image shook. Samuel Keene watched from beside his truck, jaw clenched, rain dripping from the bill of his cap. Deputy Evan Miles stared at Alicia's left pocket like the truth was sitting inches away and nobody was allowed to touch it. Calder reached for his radio and spoke with the practiced confidence of a man building a record he expected others to believe. "Dispatch, show 1 detained at the Route 46 crash scene for interfering with investigation and falsely claiming medical authority." Alicia closed her eyes for one breath. When she opened them, her voice was quiet enough that only the people closest heard it, but Nora's phone caught it anyway. "You just put the lie on the radio." For 3 seconds after Alicia said it, nobody spoke. The rain filled the silence, soft and steady, tapping on cruiser hoods and broken glass, while Calder kept his radio near his mouth like the lie might become safer if he held it there long enough. Then Jonah Reed turned toward his ambulance and called to his partner, "Get Captain Alvarez on the tablet." "Now." Calder frowned. "You do not need a captain." Jonah did not look at him. "I need medical command." His partner opened the ambulance side door and pulled down a rugged tablet in a black case. The screen flickered under the rain shield, then connected to the Broward County Emergency Medical Channel. A woman in a Navy Emergency Services jacket appeared first, Captain Maria Alvarez, her face tight with concern. Behind her, another voice entered before his face filled the screen. "Where is Nurse Monroe?" Everyone around the cruiser heard the voice. Alicia opened her eyes. Calder turned slowly toward the tablet. Dr. Marcus Ellison appeared under the harsh fluorescent light of the St. Mercy trauma bay, silver hair visible above his surgical cap, calm eyes locked on the camera. He was not loud. He did not need to be. "Sheriff Calder," he said, "why is my lead trauma nurse restrained at an active patient scene?" Calder's face stiffened. "Doctor, This woman refused to identify herself and interfered with a crash investigation. Dr. Ellison did not blink. That is not consistent with the dispatch log. The words landed harder than a shout. Captain Alvarez looked down at another screen. Route 46, mile marker 12. Initial emergency call at 7:18 in the evening. Alicia Monroe provided trauma response credential number. Credential verified by county dispatch. Emergency support authorized until arrival of emergency medical services. Deputy Evan Miles looked up sharply. Jonah Reed stared at Calder. Rachel Price covered her mouth with both hands. Calder tried to recover. I was not shown any badge. Alicia spoke, still facing forward. Left inside pocket. Dr. Ellison's voice cut in, controlled and cold. Deputy, retrieve the badge without moving her more than necessary. Calder snapped. Nobody searches my detainee without my permission. Captain Alvarez leaned closer to the tablet. Sheriff, this is now a medical command issue and a county record issue. Verify the credential. Evan looked at Calder, then at Alicia, then at Caleb's vehicle. For the first time that night, he did not wait for permission. He stepped to Alicia's left side. Ma'am, I am going to reach into the pocket you named. Alicia nodded once. Evan pulled out the sealed plastic badge. Rainwater slid over the clear cover, but the photograph was unmistakable. Alicia Monroe, lead trauma nurse. St. Mercy Regional Hospital. Emergency field response authorized. Evan held it toward Jonah, who scanned the quick response code with the ambulance tablet. A chime sounded. The screen populated instantly. Active credential. Advanced trauma certification. County emergency response clearance. Verified 7:18 in the evening. Sheriff unit arrived 7:29 in the evening. The silence changed. It was not confusion anymore. It was recognition. Calder had arrived 11 minutes after Alicia had already been cleared. Calder swallowed. She never told me that. Nora Whitfield lifted her phone with both hands. Her voice shook, but she did not lower it. She did. I recorded it. Jonah turned the tablet slightly. Calder's own body camera red light blinked against his chest. Deputy Evan looked at it, then back at the badge in his hand. Alicia's words were still living on every device around them. My trauma response badge is in my left pocket. County dispatch verified me before you arrived. Check the log. Dr. Ellison's voice became very quiet. Sheriff, the badge does not just prove who she is. It proves when you knew enough to check. Caleb's stretcher wheels clicked behind them as Jonah's partner prepared transport, but everyone near the cruiser remained still. Calder looked at the badge, at the tablet, at Nora's phone, at his deputy, and finally at Alicia. For the first time all night, he had no command left that could change the truth. State police arrived 14 minutes later, called in by Captain Alvarez before Calder understood how far the damage had spread. Lieutenant Grace Holloway stepped out of an unmarked vehicle wearing a raincoat over her uniform, and she did not ask who controlled the road. She looked at the tablet, the badge, Nora's recording, and the body camera light still blinking on Calder's chest. Then she said, Sheriff Calder, unlock nurse. Monroe now. Calder tried to speak over her. This is county jurisdiction. Holloway's eyes did not move. Not anymore. You turned a medical emergency into a civil rights investigation and a false report on an official channel. For the first time, Travis Calder reached for his keys with hands that did not look steady. The cuffs opened. Alicia flexed her wrists once, then walked straight to Jonah and gave the patient report in 20 seconds, clean, exact, and free of anger. Caleb Price was loaded into the ambulance and rushed to St. Mercy, where Dr. Ellison's team was waiting before the doors opened. Back on Route 46, Holloway asked Calder for his service weapon and badge. He stared at her like she had spoken a foreign language. You cannot do that here. She answered, I just did. Deputy Evan Miles gave a written statement before sunrise. Samuel Keene gave his dash camera footage. Nora Whitfield sent the full phone video to state investigators. Dispatch released the time log showing Alicia had been verified 11 minutes before Calder arrived. Calder was suspended that night, then removed from active duty pending investigation. Within 2 weeks, the county opened every prior complaint tied to his office. Within a month, Rachel Price filed a civil suit naming Calder in Bryan County for delaying emergency care and falsifying the scene record. The sheriff who had spent years believing the road belonged to him lost control of the story in a single evening. Caleb survived surgery. Dr. Ellison later told Rachel that the first minutes on Route 46 had made the difference. The pressure Alicia held, the airway she protected, the signs she recognized before equipment confirmed them. Alicia did not attend the county press conference. She was back at St. Mercy, washing rain and road grit from her hands before another shift began. 3 months later, Route 46 had new warning signs, brighter reflectors, and a county policy nobody could quietly ignore anymore. Every deputy, firefighter, and paramedic in Bryan County now trained under one shared rule. Verified medical care could not be interrupted because of ego, politics, or prejudice. Deputy Evan Miles transferred to the State Police Academy after giving testimony that helped reopen years of buried complaints. He told investigators the hardest part was admitting he had heard the truth and stayed silent too long. Alicia Monroe went back to work the way she always had, without speeches, without chasing cameras, without hanging awards on her wall. But one thing did change. St. Mercy created a scholarship in Denise Monroe's name for Black nursing students from rural Georgia, funded partly by donations that came after Nora's videos spread across the state. Alicia used the first ceremony to bring her father, Earl, in his wheelchair. When Caleb Price walked in on his own 2 feet and handed her a card that said, "Thank you for not letting go," Earl squeezed Alicia's hand and whispered, "You moved when everybody froze." Alicia smiled, but she did not look proud. She looked peaceful, because the badge had exposed a lie, but her character had told the truth long before that. So tell me, if you had been standing on that roadside, would you have stayed quiet, recorded, or spoken up? Share your answer below, and if this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more stories of justice.